What's up, everybody? Welcome to Rumble Rewind. I am Brandon. Today we are talking about all things Friday Night SmackDown live from Louisville, Kentucky. Let's get to it. This is about last night. Well, hey, before we get started, do me a quick favor, scroll down below this video, hit that like button for me because I promise you're going to love it. While you're down there, if you're not already subscribed to the channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We are pushing for our first 200 subscribers. We're getting closer and closer, and when we get there, we're going to give away some sweet WWE gear. We're giving away a t-shirt and a hat to one lucky subscriber, so you have to be subscribed to win. If you want to stay up to date on all the latest information, hit those post notifications so you never miss an upload. All right, let's jump into it. We would start the night with the Bloodline. Tama Tonga has officially been announced as the right-hand man to Solo Sikoa, who Paul Heyman would tell us is at the head of the table until Roman Reigns returns. At the same time, Tonga Loa would be announced as a full-fledged member of the Bloodline. Now, as this segment was apparently coming to a close, Solo Sikoa would stop Paul Heyman from leaving the ring and say, "Don't you think you should thank these men for saving you from Kevin Owens last week?" Paul Heyman very nervously thanks them for saving him from Kevin Owens, to which Tama Tonga's response is, "We could have left you for dead." Now, if you know anything about Kevin Owens, you know if you say his name, he's going to show up. So KO comes out looking for a fight. He runs to the ring, begins to kind of fight off the Bloodline, but eventually, of course, the numbers game gets the best of him and Kevin Owens gets the beat down. However, the Street Profits would come out and make the save. Now, later in the evening, we would see Solo Sikoa connecting with Paul Heyman backstage, saying that we want this 3-on-3 tag match tonight. Make it happen. Go tell Aldis we want this match. If you don't, the main event's going to be in our locker room, and it will be you, Paul Heyman, taking on Tama Tonga. To which Heyman says, "I'll make it happen." That would end up being our main event, so we will come back to that here in a little bit. Now, I've got to say, Paul Heyman is cooking with all of this. He is doing such a great job. He is truly the star of this storyline right now. And as we know, it's a placeholder storyline until Roman Reigns comes back. But for a placeholder, it's actually working really well. And I think it's working so well because Paul Heyman is selling his fear, his anxiety so well. Moving on, we would get a backstage segment involving the Women's Tag Team Championships. We were supposed to be seeing a one-on-one match between Jade Cargill and Indy Hartwell, but Candice LeRae and Indy Hartwell would go complain to Nick Aldis that it wasn't fair, and he would end up turning it into a tag match with Candice and Indy taking on Jade and Bianca. Now, we'd get that match a little later in the evening, and before the match would start, Alba Fyre and Isla Dawn made their entrance through the crowd, and Shayna Baszler and Zoe Stark also came down to ringside to watch. Now, the match itself would end pretty quickly with Jade and Bianca picking up the win. However, post-match, the other teams, Shayna and Zoe, Alba and Isla, would get into the ring and they would attack the tag champs and kind of take them out. However, that's where things really began to break down, as what was looking to be sort of an uneasy alliance between these other two teams immediately broke down. They start fighting amongst themselves. The tag team champions get back into the ring and they make their own comeback. Now, later in the night, we would get it confirmed that at Clash at the Castle, we're going to be getting a triple threat tag team match for the titles with Jade and Bianca taking on Alba Fyre and Isla Dawn and Shayna Baszler and Zoe Stark. Now, here's the thing about this. I think this is the only way that they can get the belts off of Bianca and Jade without it being a breakdown rivalry storyline. However, that said, I still see Jade and Bianca leaving Clash at the Castle with the tag team championships. They're really making Jade and Bianca both look really strong. They're trying to build them up, and they're trying to build them up through this alliance that is going to eventually turn into a rivalry. Now, we all suspect that that match between Jade and Bianca is going to take place at WrestleMania 41, so this is kind of a long build to that. So I don't see them turning on each other yet. I don't see this thing turning into a rivalry quite yet. There's still some time here. We're probably in, the third inning, if you will. But for me, I think that they will retain a Clash at the Castle and they'll continue on their dominant run for a bit longer. Tell me what you think, though. Do you see Jade and Bianca retaining, or do you see the tag titles going to one of these other teams? Apollo Crews would be interviewed backstage ahead of his apparent match with Angel Garza. However, before the interview could finish, Angel and Berto would attack and take him out. Nick Aldis would show up with some referees, some security. They would take Apollo Crews to the trainer's room and send Angel and Berto away. Now, before that could all be cleared out, LA Knight would pop up and ask Nick Aldis, where is Logan Paul? Aldis would say he's not here. Carmelo Hayes would show up and get in LA Knight's face, asking him why he's spending so much of his time worrying about and talking about someone who's not even there. LA Knight says that he can help Nick Aldis with his match card vacancy and challenges Carmelo Hayes to a match. We would get that match later in the evening. Now, the match itself was a good one, with Carmelo Hayes getting in some great looking offense. Later in the match, Melo would go for a leverage pin and he would get a hold of the tights. LA Knight would slip out and roll up Carmelo Hayes with a leverage pin of his own, picking up the win. Now, after that match later in the evening, we would get a video from Logan Paul in which he rejected LA Knight's challenge, saying that Knight has done nothing to warrant his attention. So after the match, Knight would grab a headset from Corey Graves and say, if Logan Paul won't come to SmackDown, then SmackDown will come to Logan Paul. All right, so this match and these segments leave me with a lot of thoughts. Let's start with Apollo Crews and Angel Garza. Who cares? Where are we going with this? Are we trying to get some sort of alliance, I guess, between Apollo Crews and Andrade to take on Legado del Fantasma? It's not a whole lot of places that I see that really going that could generate any interest. I mean, Andrade hasn't really done anything so far since returning to the WWE. Apollo Crews has done nothing in the last several long months or years even. Angel and Berto haven't been booked to look very strong. The Legado del Fantasma as a whole hasn't been booked to look very strong. Now, I wasn't excited about this match in the first place when I saw it on the previews, but I'm willing to give this storyline a little bit of a benefit of the doubt. I think all the people involved, whether it's Apollo Crews, Andrade to some extent, Angel Garza, the LDF, I think they've all got some potential and some upside, but they haven't been used very well. So let's see where this goes. Like I said, give it a little bit of a benefit of the doubt, but this one's kind of mid for me. I'm not really seeing where it goes. All right, as far as Logan Paul and LA Knight goes, though, I cannot wait for this match. This build's getting good. I think they're doing a good job of building it up, even though Logan Paul's not on TV every week. And I think it's been really well done. LA Knight, though, is that dude. Like, he is selling this thing so well. He's still getting such big crowd pops. We've got to see LA Knight on a championship run, and I think getting the United States Championship off of Logan Paul would be the way to do it. Now, I'm wondering, though, if this build is going to go all the way to SummerSlam. I think that's okay if it does. They just got to do something besides these backstage segments and video packages to keep the hype up. Logan Paul's got to get involved at some point. He's got to make some in-ring or at least in-person appearances, and I'm sure that will happen. It's a good time between now and SummerSlam, so if that is the end game, there's time for this story to continue to build and get really, really good. Now, as far as Carmelo Hayes goes, I saw a comment on Twitter that was like, what are they doing? Why did they call up Carmelo Hayes just to job him out? I think it goes back to his conversation with Bobby Lashley on his first night of SmackDown. Honestly, he came in cocky. He came in saying he thinks he's going to be fine. He thinks he's going to do well on his own. And I think that's the story that's being told here. I think that we're going to get to a point where Carmelo Hayes gets frustrated, and at some point he ends up coming back to that initial conversation with Bobby Lashley saying, hey, things haven't panned out. I need help after all. That's my thought. That's my theory. There's, some other ideas I have would be that Melo gets sort of billed as a draft bust, like he was drafted in the first round and it's not working out, and maybe he ends up getting traded to Raw and then breaking out, something like that. There's a lot of things that could happen to redeem the Carmelo Hayes story. I don't think they drafted him to SmackDown just to let him fade into obscurity. Carmelo Hayes has some real star power. He is one of the guys that I look at as the future of whatever brand he is on, and I think that that's the story that they're telling. It's going to be something involving the amount of losses he's taken. It's going to work out. I have a lot of faith in this story. But tell me your thoughts. Where would you go from here with Carmelo Hayes? And let me know what you think about this Logan Paul and LA Knight rivalry. All right, a little later on, we would get a match between Johnny Gargano and Grayson Waller. Now, last week, we got Austin Theory versus Tommaso Ciampa, so this is kind of a return match that's just been flipped. Now, Waller would get the win, but he would do so after pulling Austin Theory in front of a Johnny Gargano attack. Post-match, Waller would celebrate as if Theory wasn't even there. Theory would sit at ringside and just look frustrated. So for me, I see that there's continuing to sow seeds of a breakdown with A-Town Down Under. And I don't love that. I've talked about that before. I don't love that they're going to break up this team so early on. I love them as this heel team. I wish that they would do more as sort of like the tag team champions. They don't talk that up a lot. I do think that they're great tag team champions as heel teams go. Also, I don't know how I feel about Theory turning face. Like that's the direction that they're currently pointing in, is that Theory's going to be the baby face in all this. I just don't know. I don't love it. I don't love it. Where does Theory go even in that? We're currently the top champion is a face. We're thinking that LA Knight is going to end up getting this United States Championship. He's going to be a babyface. How do we get Theory anywhere outside of a one-off feud with Grayson Waller? Like, that's the problem with tag team wrestling sometimes, is they break up these teams in order to get the individuals over. They have them feud with each other, and then they don't have anything to do with them after that. I would love to see A-Town Down Under stay as a tag team, stay as just a really, really solid heel team until there is a space for Austin Theory, or until there is a space for Grayson Waller to move up the card, as opposed to just having a feud and then just sort of fading into obscurity. So all I'm saying here is I just don't see the payoff. I don't see how it could be great and how it could really benefit both guys. But I'm willing to admit that I could be wrong. It's happened, it's happened before. Moving on, let's talk about your WWE Undisputed Champion, Cody Rhodes. Early in the night, we would see Cody Rhodes in the parking garage waiting for AJ Styles. Nick Aldis would show up, tell him this can't happen, somebody's gonna get hurt. Rhodes says, oh, somebody's gonna get hurt and I've gotta deal with this. Aldis would allow Rhodes to just stay there and he would go back inside. But later in the night, Aldis would return with a ton of security. At this point, AJ Styles would pull up. Security won't let them get to each other. Instead of trying to fight through security, Cody Rhodes just goes to the ring to cut a promo, and he calls out Styles. AJ Styles comes out with members of the OC, but security stays between them. And Cody says, if you want a match at Clash at the Castle, 100% you got it, but in that match, I'm going to make you say what you should have said last week, which is, I quit. At this point, Nick Aldis briefly checks in with both men to see if they're good with the match and then gives it a thumbs up. So it is official. We are getting an I Quit match between Cody Rhodes and AJ Styles at Clash at the Castle. At this point, Cody tries to get to AJ, but security ends up restraining him, holding him back. AJ sees this as an opportunity, runs down the ramp, and hits Cody Rhodes with a forearm. I gotta say, I'm stoked for AJ Styles versus Cody Rhodes Part 2. Their match at Backlash was a banger. I mean, it was very, very good. That being said, I was more excited about it before the I Quit stipulation was introduced. I'm great with this being a gimmick match. I think that is a great next step in their feud, but I would rather see something like Falls Count Anywhere, No Holds Barred, something like that. An I Quit match says to me that Cody Rhodes is going to retain. And that was kind of my thought anyway, but there was this shred of doubt that AJ Styles could pick up the win. I just don't see Cody Rhodes ever saying I quit. That being said, I would have said the same thing about Edge when he was taking on the Judgment Day. I would have said there's no shot that Edge says I quit. There's no way 100% Edge wins this match, but then they used Beth Phoenix to get him to say I quit. There's always a chance that they do something like that. But I think taking the belt off of Cody that way seems really, really unlikely. So we are getting this one at Clash at the Castle. I'm pretty sure Cody Rhodes is going to walk out still the champion. For AJ Styles, I have no idea what that means, where he goes from here. I actually kind of want to see AJ get that belt from Cody, but we'll just have to see what happens with that. A little later, we would get an in-ring promo from Bayley, but of course, Chelsea Green and Piper Niven would interrupt. Bayley would take some time to put Piper over. She would talk about her skills as an in-ring competitor and even go on to say that she's been watching Piper and impressed with Piper since the beginning of her run in WWE. Piper says while that happened in 2017, she has been fighting since 2008. And she says, in a clash, Bayley would truly begin to understand how dangerous she really is. Later in the night, Chelsea Green and Piper Niven are backstage and they're planning the celebration for when Piper wins the title. They would bump into Nick Aldis and make some ridiculous demands about ice sculptures and champagne fountains when Naomi would show up and get in Chelsea's face. And Chelsea had made some comments about Naomi being a loser in that earlier promo. And so Nick Aldis sets up a match between the two of them next week. So we've got a simple build for Clash at the Castle happening here. We'll get a little bit more of that story next week. But the real story here, the longer term story, is actually Nia Jax versus Bayley at SummerSlam. And unfortunately for Piper Niven, who Bayley's correct about, is a great in-ring competitor, does a great job in the ring, and I wish that she had a larger part of the storyline here. Unfortunately, though, for her, she is being used in the process of building Bayley into a stronger champion. What I would love to see is post SummerSlam, Piper Niven, Nia Jax feud. That could be great. But again, I would love to know your thoughts on all of that. All right, let's talk about the main event tonight. It would be a 3-on-3 tag team match with the Bloodline taking on Kevin Owens and the Street Profits. It was a hectic match that ended in a DQ when Solo used a chair outside of the ring. The real story here, though, took place after the match, where the Bloodline actually ends up taking out all three guys. Solo goes for a Samoan spike, but instead ends up using the spear. And then after that, the Bloodline puts KO through the announce table with the triple powerbomb. So all of this is just helping us to move from where we are to where we're headed. It's a placeholder storyline for this larger story at play, and that larger story is the Bloodline versus the Bloodline. Obviously, we've got these guys that are the new Bloodline, the OG Bloodline. Everybody with the exception of Jay is out, and Jay is even on Raw, so they're kind of taking over. They're talking about Solo Sikoa being the head of the table. They talked about getting orders from the tribal chief, who we assume could be The Rock. But this whole placeholder storyline is working. It's working. But I will say that Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa really need some legitimacy here. They really need to be built up and really need to look like they are who Paul Heyman says they are. They need to look dominant. They need to look vicious. And that is the one part that's really missing. So put these guys in some matches with some lower card guys. Give them some squash wins. Let them look powerful. Let them look dominant. Make them look like they are dangerous villains, as Paul Heyman says they are. Now, I did love that Solo Sikoa used the spear. He is over and over telling us that, man, he just wants to be Roman Reigns. He doesn't want to be Roman Reigns' right-hand man. He doesn't want to be the number one guy in the Bloodline. He wants to be the head of the table. And more so than the position, he wants to be Roman Reigns. I love what they're doing with Solo. I love the way that they're trying to make him look like, feel like, act like Roman Reigns. It's going to make that rivalry when it happens a lot of fun. I wish that Solo had longer hair so they could put it in a man bun, put him in a tracksuit, let him wear a shirt that says head of the table. I think it would be great for him to become more and more like Roman Reigns until Roman Reigns comes back. Roman Reigns and say, you're a copy, I'm the original, and that's where it can go in that direction. The real star of this whole thing, though, is Paul Heyman. That guy is selling the fear like a boss. I love it. His voice is shaky. He's stuttering at times. Paul Heyman is a smooth talker, and so when he gets out there and starts stuttering and stuff like that, I love it. I gotta say, when Roman Reigns comes back, when Jimmy Uso comes back, it's going to be insane. I'm hoping it doesn't get dragged out for too long. There have been some rumors about Roman Reigns coming back sooner than later, but there have also been some rumors about it being pushed back even farther, beyond even SummerSlam, before we see Roman Reigns again. I hope it doesn't get dragged out too long because people are going to lose interest. I'm all about long-term storytelling. I love it. However, it's gotta move forward. So some ways that we can do that are, again, like I said, let's make the Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa look dominant. Let's make this Bloodline faction look really, really dangerous, and then bring him back. And I hope Roman Reigns comes back before SummerSlam, but we'll just have to see where we go. All right, this show overall for me was kind of okay. It wasn't bad by any stretch of the imagination. It just wasn't great. There were no real OMG moments. There were no big surprises, but there was a lot of simmering stories that are just kind of continuing to develop, continuing to marinate, and that's okay. That's okay. We can use weeks like that. It's great for building up. Now, next week is the go home week for Clash at the Castle. So I'm looking forward to that as it wraps up some stories. It'll get a little bit bigger, and then we'll begin to head towards Money in the Bank. So again, this one for me was just kind of okay. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10, which isn't bad, but it's not great. Tell me your thoughts. How would you rate this show? What stood out to you? Let me know in the comments below. Now, before we jump off of here, I want to introduce a new segment. Since Friday night is the last day of the week for WWE programming, let's talk about which brand won the week. This, ladies and gentlemen, is Brand Wars. So, Raw, NXT, SmackDown, which show was the best one this week? For me, this week, I've got to go with NXT. Now, I get it. NXT was in a go-home week towards Battleground. That show was solid. The build to Battleground's been really well done. Battleground is shaping up to be an awesome PLE. It is this Sunday. If you're not familiar with that yet, check out my preview and predictions video right here. But NXT in general over the last few weeks has been really, really interesting and really, really good. Now, because this was a go-home week, that means next week was coming fresh out of a PLE, while Raw and SmackDown are entering into a go-home week. So I expect next week Raw or SmackDown to take this thing and win the week. Now, if you're not familiar with what's going on in NXT, I would encourage you to check out my video right here, reviewing last week's episode, and just kind of familiarize yourself with what's going on in the product. WWE is doing a great job of building up future stars through NXT, and it's fun to watch these stories, these characters sort of develop. So for me, Brand Wars this week goes to NXT, but let me know in the comments your thoughts. Who do you think won the week? Which of the shows do you think was the best this week? Well, hey, that is it for today. Thanks so much for hanging out with me here on Rumble Rewind. Before you go, don't forget, like this video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, turn on your post notifications. As we close in on our WWE gear giveaway, you're going to want to be eligible. You're going to want to be in the know. Well, thanks again for hanging out with me here on Rumble Rewind. We'll catch you on the next one.